I mean, are we ready? It's the Pete Souza Show. It is a Friday edition of the Pete Souza Show. I'd say it's Football Friday, but that's kind of cliche at this point. So we'll call it Freaky Friday, Friday the 13th. Very excited about today's show. We have a lot going on, a lot to talk about. One of the things, of course, a serious topic. We'll talk about Tua Tagovailoa, his injury last night, concussion, his third, how that plays into his future, and really some of the reaction around the NFL world. Ryan Clark on ESPN, we'll hear what he had to say. We'll also hear Antonio Pierce just moments ago, the Raiders head coach, really sounding off about that. And with a serious tone, we're going to talk to Matt Davis, too, former college football player, my man from the University of Richmond. He'll be with us in the second segment to talk about concussions, a little something he knows a lot about. Unfortunately, right now, Matt's coming off the golf course, so he knows a lot about drinking, too. So it could be drunk Matt Davis. And if that's the case, we'll veer away from being too serious. And then, of course, you talk about serious. Well, Cam Stewart joining us in segment 3. Fresh off a big call last night, China Spring University, China Spring lost. So although a lot of people in the China Spring football world are upset about that, they're not upset about the quality of the broadcast with Cam on the call and the Rogue Media Network powering the entire situation. Mike Hamilton just enters the studio. Busy day for him. He gave me the Irish salute, and we will continue here when we talk about Slovakics. I'm heading to Dallas, so no football game this weekend, but I got a couple volleyball games for the Big 12. But I'm going to Dallas on Saturday. Driving from Waco to Dallas, what do? Well, you stop at Slovakics. I will be stopping at Slovakics, and I will be grabbing kolaches, and I will distribute them to people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to remind them of just how awesome Slovakics of West is. Right off of I-35. You've got to stop there, of course. We love our friends at Crawford Austin, another presenting sponsor. You see the other presenting sponsors or sponsors over my shoulder. Couple things to open the show with. I want to talk about the NFL and college football, and then we'll get into the Tua stuff. Couple lighter notes, couple more serious notes. Dallas Cowboys fans, buckle up. This is I look at television a lot of times to kind of gauge the interest America has. And I think that when you look at the Cowboys schedule coming up, first of all, we talked about it. Noon kick, they're playing the Saints. They're a 6-point favorite. That game is with Tom Brady, Kevin Burkhardt, and Aaron Andrews. So that's on Sunday. Excited for that. Obviously, it's the next one, so it's the one we're most excited about. After that on Sunday, the Baltimore Ravens come to town. That's a 3:25 kick. That's going to be there'll be a lot of sizzle around that and a lot of excitement and a lot of hype, regardless of how the Ravens do this weekend off that opening week loss. And then Thursday night football, they travel to the Meadowlands to take on the New York Giants. That follows the Ravens game. So a trio of exciting games coming up for Cowboys fans. Tonight, as far as that is concerned, I'm looking forward to Arizona and Kansas State. That's a Big 12 game, folks. I want to check out the number on that. It is, let me see this real quick. Arizona and Kansas State. So Kansas State is a 7-point favorite at home in Manhattan. Geez, you think if that was later in the year, they might even be a bigger favorite. Arizona's 2-0, and so is Kansas State. Man, I'm staying away from that one, but certainly is one of interest. When we speak of gambling, last night, college football, wild story. South Alabama won, I think it was 87-10 officially, over Northwestern State. Now, the key and the drama, there's actually a lot of controversy around this game because a lot of betting houses took the bets, obviously. Southern Alabama was a 37-point favorite, but in the second half, the game had become such a blowout, and clearly the coaches don't care. They did 5-6-minute quarters. What this did was it nullified a lot of the betting houses and their rules. DraftKings, for example, they honored the over-under picks. What was the final, Zach? 87-10? Yeah, 87-10. Zach Burke on the wheels of steel. Who could forget him? He's got us covered. So that the over-under bets were honored, I guess because the point total went above. That's just what I read. But as far as the game outcome is concerned, the game wasn't finished. not nearly enough time in the game for those bets to have been honored. So if you took South Alabama, let's say you bet $1,000 on South Alabama, so you're looking for a nice payday. $2,000 is coming your way, right? Or $1,000 coming your way. That's how I look at it, by the way. That's why I'm such a stupid gambler. I'm like, oh man, give me $2,000. Well, 1,000 was that of that was yours, by the way. And if you lost, you would have to pay the vig. Anyways, bets were voided for people that took South Alabama because just not enough time went off the clock as far as the game was concerned. So that's got to be a lot of people were waking up probably pretty upset this morning. All right, back to last night. Serious note, and I kind of want to we'll just play some feedback of some people that know a lot more about this stuff than I do, but I also do want to talk about just even from last night into this morning into like this afternoon about how my thought process has changed. And it's a really good example of why, as fans and people who follow this stuff, you really do want to take a moment to breathe before you weigh in on any kind of platform where people might actually hear your opinion. But first, let's go back to last night. If you're watching, take a look. If you're listening, the details really are played out through the audio. But this is when Tua Tagovailoa experienced that concussion last night playing against the Bills in a situation where they were still in the third quarter. There was 4 minutes left. So obviously, no problem with him being on the field. But a game that had sort of already gotten away from the Bills. Zach, play the clip, please.
From the 13, Tua. Back to pass, steps up in the pocket, going to take off and run, and he's hit there. He took a shot to the head on the tackle there, and he is shaken up. Oh, this is not good for Tua, who has a history of concussions.
So if you saw when he goes down, he ends up in that what they call the fencing position. That's when you see his fingers like that. And that's when you can start talking about not just a concussion, and I read this morning, not just a concussion, but maybe a traumatic brain injury. That's what that fencing position is associated with. So we're now drifting into a whole nother situation here as far as the wellness of one of the, I guess, more marketable and wealthier quarterbacks, certainly in the NFL. Took his team to a playoff appearance last year. It seems like he continues to get better and better. A lot of excitement around him this year. But it's ironic. This happened on Thursday night. Remember, a few years ago, 2 years ago on a Thursday night, we saw him in that same exact position after absorbing contact, another big hit. And his first concussion was sustained in 2019 when he was playing with Alabama. You think about players who have gone before Tua, and I think a lot of guys would tell you, and I think Ryan Clark actually talks about this in a clip we're about to play. Players sustain, we'd be shocked to actually know the official diagnosis of concussions and, the amount certain players sustain. Like I said, I'm using the word sustained a lot, but the amount certain players sustain and continue to play. I think that we would all be shocked. And look, that's their decision, right? But the serious situation that surrounds Tua is, his reaction, the reaction players are having to his reaction. There's clearly another level of concussion, or like I said, traumatic brain injury even, he might be taking on here. Let's play a clip from Ryan Clark this morning. This is Ryan Clark, former NFL player, talking on Get Up this morning with Mike Greenberg and Bart Scott and Mike Tannenbaum, exactly about how he sees this situation playing out and what he thinks, what he looks forward to possibly happening.
Now let's talk about the reality of it. Tua Tagovailoa has worked to play this game his entire life. So now the Miami Dolphins, the NFL, you're going to have to step in and not do the right thing and tell someone who has worked for his dream that he shouldn't play anymore. But make sure that you go through the process in a way where he has the full information to make his own decision. Tua Tagovailoa's family is going to talk to him about what your life looks like after football. Can you be here for your children? Can you be here and coherent for your grandchildren? What will be your quality of life? But Bart knows this like I know this. I looked at those lists of concussions, I know a myriad and a multitude of players that have suffered more concussions than Tua Tagovailoa. And I know that all of those players wanted to get back on the field as soon as possible because it's what we do. There's a reason that fans are the way they are about football. It's because these men go out each and every week and do things that most people aren't willing to do. And when those things have a bad consequence, or when those things have a difficult ramification, or when adversity strikes, what makes those people special is that they don't blink. I don't believe that Tua Tagovailoa is going to blink. I don't want Tua Tagovailoa to blink. But as someone who loves this game, as someone who wants everybody to walk off the field as healthy as possible, I know that they truly have to dive in and give him the reality of how this may affect him going forward.
So right there, you hear a very honest, thoughtful take from Ryan Clark. And that was sort of the side that I was airing on this morning. And I think I'm not talking about Ryan Clark anymore. This is me. I definitely have an unhealthy, archaic approach to the sport of football and the contact and the concussions. And it's not a smart, it's not thoughtful. My initial reaction is to think that, okay, this is up to Tua Tagovailoa. He will be cleared to play football again in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I believe he'll go out and play again. Now, this is someone who I respect not only because he was an intern for a day or two on the Howard Stern show back in 2007, but I also think he was a beast of a player. This was not a guy who was a kicker or a quarterback. We're talking about a linebacker who would stick his nose in it. Now he's the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Here's Antonio Pierce talking about today to the media just about 40 minutes ago what he would tell Tua Tagovailoa.
I'll be honest, I'll just tell him to retire. It's not worth it. It's not worth to play the game. I haven't witnessed anything like I've seen that's happened to him 3 times. Scary. You can see right away the players' faces on the field. You can see the sense of urgency from everybody to get Tua help. I just think at some point, he's going to live longer and he's going to play football. Take care of your family.
That was a sobering comment from Antonio Pierce that really sort of brought me back down to earth and makes me take the jock approach out of the situation and kind of the boneheaded approach out of the situation and the get her done type of approach. I was raised on NFL films. I was raised on footage of Jack Tatum just coming across the middle and clobbering guys, knocking helmets off in Super Bowls. And, that we see now today, the condition that a lot of those players are left in. Jack Tatum has left us. I think it was diabetes that killed him, but he also was having problems as far as damage done to his body when he was playing football. Something else that these guys were talking about this morning, Ryan Clark and Bart Scott, when he mentioned Bart, he was talking about Bart Scott. Sustaining injuries to your ankle, your knee, those are things that you kind of can talk yourself into going through. When it comes to these brain injuries, I think that players more so than they used to are really scared about this. Mike Tannenbaum brought up one point just to throw in a front office perspective on this whole thing. He said what he thinks that the Dolphins will do is if you put a guy on the IR, basically he's ineligible for 4 weeks, and that will take the pressure off the organization, give everybody a chance to breathe and see exactly what is what. We're going to talk to Matt Davis, former college football player, who we may be calling drunk Matt Davis in a little bit. And in that case, we won't ask him too many serious questions about Tua. He just came off the golf course. All right, here's a much lighter story that I saw that I thought was hilarious. Now, the Minnesota Twins, this is according to an Associated Press report, they've released a minor league catcher. The guy's name's Derek Bender. They released him on Thursday. And the reason they released him is because he told opposing hitters, he's a catcher, what type of pitches were coming down the plate during at-bats. Now, obviously, we're in the later stages of this season. Now, he is a 6th-round pick out of Coastal Carolina, was taken in July. He was playing for Fort Myers, the Mighty Muscles there. That's in the Twins single-A affiliate. In the second game of a September 6th doubleheader, Bender told multiple hitters for the Lakeland Flying Tigers, that's a Detroit farm team, the specific pitches being thrown by starter Ross Dunn, sources said. Again, this is an AP article. Bender's willingness to tip pitches surprised Lakeland players, and there were no indications of wrongdoing from the Flying Tigers, sources said. Now, here's the best part. Bender told his teammates he wanted the season to be over, according to sources. And now, he's a catcher and first baseman that was selected with the 188th pick this year. He signed for about $300,000, and he's apparently going to be able to keep the entirety of that signing bonus. And I would imagine if he was the 188th pick of the draft, it's like a 6-round pick. He'll probably, I'm sure he'll get another chance. But wild story, and it made me think of the Los Angeles Lakers in the mid-90s. Now, this team was basically shipwrecked because of the personalities on the team, because a lot of you're talking about J.R. Ryder, Nick Van Exel, and a guy who was young at the time who hadn't really come into his own, Robert Horry. Of course, a young Kobe Bryant, too. The story goes that they were getting swept by the Utah. Actually, let's let Robert Horry tell the story. This is around the 1-2-3 Cancun Lakers. Now, the story was these guys wanted the season over. In the huddle, Nick Van Exel would go 1-2-3 Cancun, and then eventually they would get swept by the Utah Jazz. But here's what Robert Horry had to say on the All the Smoke podcast with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson.
I'm at 1-2-3 Cancun. See, people don't understand where that came from. The 1-2-3 Cancun came when we got swept by Utah. And people don't understand, it wasn't to be negative, it was to try to loosen up. Nick was trying to loosen up the team because we was down 3-0. He said, man, let's just go out here and play loose. If we don't, we go into Cancun. On 3, 1-2-3 Cancun. And everybody took it as Nick saying, oh, fuck this, the season's over with, right? He was trying to loosen guys up. Mm-hmm. We lost that game. You know, he lost to a better team. We were a young, immature team that got beat by a veteran team who went on to go to the championship. But didn't win it, though, but they went on to the championship.
Okay, that's one of my favorite stories of all time, the 1-2-3 Cancun. And that guy, I think that got Nick Van Exel traded. Or cut, I forget, but he was no longer with the Lakers shortly thereafter, and it really changed the culture of the organization. They brought in Phil Jackson, Shaq came in, he got into shape, and Robert Horry talks about the fact that 2 training camps after that, he came into a situation where everybody in camp was in shape, which in the NBA is a rarity. We want to move on now to a snub. Lil Wayne, okay? Now, there was a lot. I want to bring Zach in for this because he is our resident hip-hop expert. Cam is waiting in the wings with his hood up, but he's going to have to wait a little longer. Unless you have something to say, Cam, but I doubt it. So, Kendrick Lamar is going to perform at this year's Super Bowl in New Orleans. Immediately after Kendrick Lamar was named, Zach, for me, somebody from 30,000 feet who kind of observes hip-hop and what's going on, more than the story, that more than Kendrick getting named was the backlash that it wasn't Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
No. So what have you heard about that story? Give me some context.
All right. So
because I heard that there was some chicanery going on.
So here's everything that I heard, like leading up to it, was one of the very vocal people about it was Nicki Minaj. And it goes back to, I guess she was alluding to some beef between Jay-Z, who is he's part of the NFL Entertainment Board.
That's his role in it.
That who helps, or it could be he has a role with the NFL when it comes to selecting the halftime show. And so her argument was that he is letting like this beef from forever ago, back when we're getting into the belly of it here. Birdman, who runs, Young Money, Cash Money.
Oh, yeah.
Said back when Wayne was in his heyday that Wayne was the greatest rapper of live, and Nicki is kind of assuming that was placating that Jay-Z was still bothered by that. And so like he kind of put the kibosh on Lil Wayne being the Super Bowl halftime performer because of that. The thing that happens is, in all of my research into this, is that the city itself, or at least this is what has happened the past 2 years, like Vegas put Usher on the list of their short list. The city turns in a short list to the NFL board.
They put Lil Wayne on the list.
No, I'm using as the last year for it, because
okay.
I don't know for sure about this year.
Okay.
But like Usher was one of the performers on Vegas's short list. from last year, but the city that hosts turns that into the board. The NFL looks over it and presents it back to the city of like, hey, this is who we're going to go with then. Okay. But it's the city who presents the list at first. Now, if Lil Wayne was on the list and then they decided to go with somebody else, that's fine. But I would also argue that there's not a bigger name in the world of hip hop right now outside of Kendrick Lamar. So it makes sense of why the NFL would choose Kendrick over Wayne in a way. But yeah, that seems to be a lot of it. All comes down to Jay-Z being the scapegoat for all this, apparently.
So it gets better. I want you to, or worse, depending on whose side you're on in this whole thing. Lil Wayne finally broke his silence, and he did it overnight into this morning. It's a little bit of a longer response, but I want you to hear all of it. We may cut it off towards the end, but this is Lil Wayne. Check it out.
Forgive me for the delay. The delay on, just the delay, I want to say, I had to, first of all, I had to get strength. I had to get strength enough to do this without breaking. I must say thank you. I must say thank you to every voice, every opinion, all the care, all the love and the support out there. Is your words turned into arms, and it held me up when I try to fall back. That hurt a lot. You know what I'm talking about? It hurt a whole lot. I blame myself for not being mentally prepared for a letdown. And
all right, at the risk of playing all that and losing some information. So Zach, it seems like now here's like here's what I pulled from that. It seems like somebody told him
it was
going to be him.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then I wonder if he was on the short list then that the city turned in. And then the NFL was like, oh, okay, that's cool, but we're still going to go with Kendrick Lamar. So that could be a thing. Granted, I don't know how much of it has to do with Jay-Z himself. Well, because there's more than just him on the board. But
so
I'm with you. It does seem like he saw it as a foregone conclusion that he would be included in.
So here's the one thing too, I will say. If you noticed and I watched the entire clip, he was non-confrontational.
No, not at all.
Thing, which I think opens the door to, as we know, Super Bowl acts have all kinds of guests, additions, and I would not be shocked. And Kendrick Lamar, I think we could find out a lot about him. Like if he were to let Wayne close the show with him or something, that would be pretty awesome.
Did you see Master P also came out and was like, that's what Kendrick should do. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody in New Orleans rap is getting involved in this.
We're a long way from home, but we're not a long way from Matt Davis. The Pete Souza, powered by the Rogue Media Network, rolls on in just a few minutes with Matt Davis talking about concussions and the dangers of playing football.